Exactly 5.5 years ago when I was in year 11, I got the most shocking result that I ever got on a test, on an exam, and I got it when it actually counted, right? When it actually mattered, when it counted towards my ATAR, when it counted towards VCE, to potentially the uni I was going to go, when it actually impacted that, I got the worst possible mark that I could ever think about getting. I did a subject early in year 11, and this subject is something which I'm really good at. I speak Sinhalese fluently. It was a language. And previously, I'd been in Sri Lanka and I'd been studying this subject. I'd been outperforming people living in Sri Lanka, doing this subject, writing essays, speaking, all this stuff. And having to do that in Australia is super simple, super easy, right? I ended up getting a really, really bad grade, and I had to go and tell my parents that, and I had to have that conversation with them, telling them that I didn't perform to the best of my ability. They wanted me to become a doctor or an engineer, or, you know, because I'm brown, so doctor, engineer, or lawyer, whatever. But, and I felt like I had to live up to that, right? Because you have all these expectations from your parents. And getting that in year 11, getting 27 as my study score in year 11, really shot my confidence down, because now I was thinking about it, I got a 27 for a subject which I'm good at. How am I going to get 40s, 45s out of 50 for subjects like math and the hard math, right? Like specialist mathematics and physics and chemistry. In year 12, how am I going to do that? I had one shot in year 11 to prove to myself that I'm able to sort of go through VCE, do a subject, do well at it. This was meant to be my strength subject, and I screwed that up so bad. How am I going to do well in year 12 now? Now I have to get like 45s for every single subject just to make up for that 27 which I got, right? And it feels really bad. And you probably have had similar sort of scenarios where you studied so hard for a test, for a SAC, for an exam, whatever, and you've not got the score that you wanted. And you actually tried this time. Like, you tried. Like, people, I know some of your friends might have tried less than you and got more than you, right? And you actually tried, and you didn't get the score you wanted, or you got a really bad score, right? It doesn't reflect your knowledge. You might be thinking, this score which I got doesn't reflect my knowledge at all. Like, if they actually knew what I knew about this subject, they wouldn't give me this score, right? And it can feel really demoralizing having a score like this and going through school and getting a bad test grade. But the way that I realized what the issue was is I thought about it like, if someone held a gun to my head and said, you had to get a 45, 46, 47 out of 50, right? 47 raw for this subject, would I be able to do it? And I came to the conclusion that I would be able to do it, right? Because you move differently when you're in different circumstances, when you're under different constraints, different pressures, right? And if someone told you, if I told you right now that you have to get a 97 ATAR, right? Or you have to get a 95 plus ATAR, you have to get into the uni, you have to get into the course that you want to get into, or I'm going to come and shoot someone that you love. Like, if I say that, right? I'm not saying I will, but if I do say that, and that was the actual thing, then you would move differently. Everything you would do would be in a different manner, and you would have like a different purpose to how you do it. You'd be like, oh, the stake is so high, now I have to do it, right? So I came to the conclusion that if I actually spent more time consistently, and I'm not saying spend every waking second, but if I spend more time consistently throughout the year at my goals, then I probably would have achieved them. Because if you think back to it, I want you to think back to the time where you did a test, an exam that you didn't do well for, and you actually studied. You thought that you studied and you should have gotten a better grade, right? And you didn't get that good grade. And everyone around you got good grades, and your friends might have gotten better grades than you, and you did really bad, you did really shit, and you don't understand why. You don't deserve this grade, right? I want you to actually think about how consistent you were leading up to that test. Did you study like a week before the test? Like 3 days before the test? 4 days before the test? Or did you study for like 3 months before the test, having that as the main goal, the main outcome, the main event, right? And I can guarantee 98% of you guys didn't study 3 months out, 4 months out, 5 months out. You guys probably studied 3 days out, 4 days out, 1 week out, maybe 1.5 weeks at best, right? But the thing is, sometimes you can study 1.5 weeks before an exam and you can do well, right? It can happen sometimes, because naturally there are certain concepts in certain subjects which are easy to digest, right? Or you might be good at understanding, let's just say math. Like, I might be better mathematically, analytically, analyzing things, right? I might be really quick. with identifying, I don't know, pattern recognition or coming up with logical sequences. If that's one of my strengths, then I probably have to study less than you in order for you to get the same mark as you. I can study for 1.5 weeks and get the same mark that you could have gotten if you had to study for 2, 3, 4 weeks, right? You got to understand your strengths and weaknesses, and you have to really think to yourself, was I consistent? Like, were you actually consistent, or were you just studying and cramming for 3 days, 4 days, 5 days before the test, right? And if you actually think about that and do it like a genuine audit, you realize that most of the time that you got bad grades, you probably did deserve it. Because most of the time you got bad grades, you were cramming 3 or 4 days or 1 week before the test, before the exam, right? And yes, it was hard. Because for 1 week, you're probably losing sleep, not going to any social events, studying your ass off the whole day, right? And that gave you a false sense of security, gave you an illusion, right? It's an illusion that you actually deserve those marks, but you don't, because you only studied 3, 4, 5 days, right? There's people that are studying for 3, 4 weeks, and this is the main event, right? The exam is the main event, and they're studying for 4, 5, 6, 7 weeks before that exam. And I'm not saying you have to study every day. All I'm saying is they're doing it consistently. That's it. That's the only difference. You might be studying the same amount of hours as them, but they might have had it split up. And just because they had it split up, they might have studied the same amount of hours as you, but they would have gotten a completely different score to you, okay? That's the main takeaway that I want you to take from this video. Consistency is the most important thing, and it's the most underrated thing. And if you think back to the time where you did bad on an exam, 98% of the time it's because you weren't consistent. It's not because you didn't study enough, okay? Consistency. Even if you're studying the same amount, you have to spread it out among multiple days, multiple hours, multiple weeks in order to increase your potential, or like maximize the possibility of getting a good grade, right? This illusion of hard work is something that I want to talk about, because a lot of people think that they're going to get really good grades. They study for a week, they study for 3 or 4 days before an exam, and they're not sleeping, they're stressed, it's a mental mess around, right? And it's super hard, it's super challenging, because you guys don't have the habit of being consistent before. You're just going out with your mates and partying and doing this, doing that, you're procrastinating. And then when it comes to like a week before the exam, you guys might think that you work well under pressure, but you don't. When it comes to before the exam, you're just trying to cram, you're trying to study so hard, and at the end of the day, you don't get the grade that you want, but it's because you're not consistent, and you have a false sense of security. If you study for 3 or 4 days before the test, and you study really hard and you struggle, now you have a false sense of security saying that you deserve the mark that you deserve, right? Just because you struggled for 4 days. But just because you struggled for 4 days doesn't mean anything. Just because you struggled for 4 days, there's people that are not struggling the same amount as you, that have just been proactive, right? They might not even study as much as you, but they've just been proactive. They've exposed themselves to the concept 3 or 4 times. They've done this months in advance. You've done this weeks or like days in advance. That's the difference. So I've come up with 2 strategies, foolproof strategies. If you can follow these 2 concepts, then you can make sure that you will always succeed. You will always achieve your goals. You will never ever fail in a test, in a SAC, in an exam, or get a score like I did, right? I got 27 out of 50 for a subject, which I was meant to get a 45 raw in. But you can make sure that you're never ever going to fall into that camp, into that category, if you can follow these 2 concepts, okay? The first concept is there's 4 different times you have to be exposed to the content. Adrian talked about this in one of our TikToks. There's this thing called the curve of forgetting, right? When you expose yourself to the content once, you will forget most of it, 70, 80% of it. When you expose yourself to the content 2 times, you will now forget only 50, 60% of it. 3 times, it goes down to 40, 30% of it. 4 times, it goes down to 10, 20%, right? I might butchering the numbers, but you understand the concept, the idea. This is from the book Atomic Habits. It's a really good book if you want to read it. But they talk about this curve of forgetting. You need to expose yourself to the concept or a habit so many times in order for it to stick in your head, okay? And this is the difference between consistency and not consistency. If you take 2 days before the exam, you studied for 2 days straight, 12-hour days, okay? You woke up at 8, you studied till 8. You didn't even go to school. You took school off. You studied 12 hours on Thursday, Wednesday, 12 hours on Thursday, because Friday you have your test. Imagine you did that. How many hours did you study for? 24 hours, okay? But how many times have you exposed yourself to the concept? You've only exposed yourself to the concept once or twice, because the once is going to be when you go through the theory, when you're doing your 12-hour cram session, and then twice when you do like a practice question, when you're doing your practice questions, because you have to do the practice questions, right? So you've only exposed yourself to the concept twice. But what have I done, right? I'm the top student. What I've done is I've taken 4 weeks in advance, and I've done, so 24 hours, let's 4, 8, 12, 16, 20, 24, right? 6 hours a week. That's all I take. If I take 6 hours a week, okay? 6, 12, 18, 24. And I space that out like 1 hour each day, take Sunday off. How many times have I probably exposed myself to the concept? Right? In that first week, I probably exposed myself to the concept twice, because I probably did 1 hour of looking at the theory, another hour of questions. In the second week, I exposed myself to the concept like another 2 times, because I did like another 2 practice past papers, right? So now it's like 4 times. And the third and the fourth week, I was just hammering questions, right? And I was teaching my friends. I've exposed myself to the concept 8 times. So I've studied the same amount as you. I've exposed myself to the concept 8 times. You've exposed yourself to the concept twice. In addition, I've also helped my friend understand the concept. I've taught him how to do this, what the theory is, how to apply this, how to do the question, how to do the exam, right? Do you think that you're going to outperform me? No. I've studied the same amount as you. I could have studied less than you, half the time that you would have studied, right? But I would have exposed myself to the concept double the amount as you would have if you did the 12-hour cram sessions 2 days in a row, right? This is the difference. The difference between people that do well and people that don't do well is literally what happens in the shadows. And you need to be working hard in the shadows. Otherwise, you're going to have a false sense of security thinking that you're going to do well, okay? That's the main shift which I made from year 11 to year 12 is stop thinking that you deserve the grades just because you crammed for 3 days. It's unhealthy and it's not good, and there'll be a lot of mental health issues, okay? If you try to come up with a solution, a system, a timetable, right? Something which is structured, and you stick to that, you can study less but get more grades. And it's all about consistency. That's the difference. So the first principle is always make sure that you expose yourself to the concept 4 times minimum, okay? What this means is, the first time is when you go through the theory by yourself. So you're reading a textbook before class. The second time is if you want to save time, you can merge your study time with your class time. So now the second time is when you go to class and you actually study. When you go to class and you get taught by the teacher and you do some questions or whatever, what ends up happening is this is the second time that you're getting exposed to the concept. The third time you get exposed to the concept is when you go home and you do a practice test. So you do a bunch of tests, right? By yourself. Now you've exposed yourself to the concept 3 times. And if you want to do really well, you expose yourself to the concept 4 times by teaching one of your friends, right? You teach your friend, like even if you don't know the concept, it's fine. Try to teach the concept to your friend. Try to teach a question to your friend. Go find a super hard, challenging question in your book, right? On an exam. Go show it to your friend and say, do you know how to do this? What you can do is you can even look at the solutions. You don't have to know how to do it. You can look at the solutions, understand how the solutions work. Go tell your friend how to do the question, right? 4 times you've exposed yourself to the concept. There's no way that after 4 times of exposing yourself to the concept and you spent like 4 hours on this, you're going to understand this less than someone who's just crammed for 4 hours. Because all he's done is he's just like read the textbook. He's done a bunch of questions. That's it. You've done an extra thing of explaining it to your friend and also spacing this out. Each time you space out your studying period and your exposure, if you space it out, the more you will retain, just because of that curve of forgetting. This is scientifically proven, by the way. The curve of forgetting is something which is scientifically proven to happen. So space it out, be consistent, teach your friend, okay? That's concept 1. Concept 2 is you have to make sure that you're setting goals in an appropriate way. And I talked about this in my previous video. If you want to understand exactly how to set goals, look at my previous video. But what I want to say here is there is a method of setting goals. And this method is called the AGP method, okay? The A is the aspiration. The G is the goal. The P is the process. A lot of people, how do they set goals? They say, I want to get into this uni. All right, I want to get into engineering. I want to get into medicine. I want to go to Monash University. That's how they set goals. That's completely wrong, because a goal, that's not even a goal. That's just a dream, right? Your dreams only turn into reality if you have a certain process or a goal behind it. So we think about this in 3 steps. The first one is the aspiration. That's what you guys most likely will call a goal, or like what most people most likely call a goal. The average people, this is what they call a goal. The aspiration, right? I want to get into engineering at Monash University, where I'm right now, okay? I want to get into medicine at Melbourne University, okay? That's the aspiration. But you have no control over that because there's no action plan in place, okay? That is your aspiration. What is the goal? How do you actually set the goal? The goal is every single bit of work that you have to do by the end of the year in order to achieve that, okay? So the goal would be, if I want to get into engineering at Monash University, then I have to get 40 plus in 3 of my subjects, okay? If I'm doing like chemistry, physics, methods, I have to get 40 plus out of 50. For people that are not in Victoria, we have a scale out of 50, and everything scales up or down. So if you're doing chemistry, physics, and methods, those subjects would scale up. And if I wanted to get a 40 plus out of 50, then what I would have to make sure I do is I would have to do 30 past papers 3 times over by the end of the year, okay? So I go to the Vika website, look at the last 30 years of past papers, or the last 10, 20 years of past papers, and I would not only do them once, because remember, consistency and the amount of times you expose yourself to the concept matters. I would do them 3 times over. Once, like 2 months before the exam, maybe a month before the exam, couple weeks before the exam. By the 3rd time, it's pretty much cheating because you know all the answers, but that doesn't matter because at that point, you've exposed yourself to so many different concepts, so many different times that you know the past papers like the back of your hand, okay? So that is the goal. The goal is not to get into university. The goal is to do 20 past papers for 3 different subjects twice. If I can make sure that I do that by the end of the year, tell me that I won't get into engineering at Monash University. I will, because if I can do those 3 things, those 3 goals, 20 past papers for these 3 subjects, I will get a 40 plus in these 3 subjects, and I will get a 95 plus on my ATAR. Okay, that's how I think. And that's what actually works. The probability, I work on probabilities, right? What that means is, I know that if I do this, if I commit to this goal, if I do 20 past papers for these 3 subjects 3 times, right? I will 98% of the time achieve the goal which I want to achieve, or I will achieve the aspiration which I want to achieve, okay? That is the goal. The 3rd thing is the process. The process is what we do on a day-to-day basis in order to achieve the goal, okay? Because the goal is really big. There's no way you're going to sit down one day and do 60 past papers 3 times because it's not possible, right? So the goal now, the process rather, is what do I do on a day-to-day basis? So the process we talk about, like you block out a certain time of the day, okay? Okay, it's 2 hours from 6 a.m. to 8 a.m. before school. I'm going to do 1 hour of theory, 1 hour of past papers, okay? And if I work backwards and if I timeline my year backwards, by the end of the year, I would have achieved that 60 past papers 3 times over for these 3 subjects. That's what I would have achieved, okay? So the process works up to the goal. And as soon as you hit the goal, you will achieve the aspiration. And there's a 98% probability you will achieve the aspiration. If I told you that all you had to do is these past papers and you study in this specific way, and all you have to do is commit to the process, show up every day and do it every day, right? You don't even need to study 12 hours a day. You just need to be consistent every day. And 98% of the time, you will get into the course you want. You will get into the career you want. You will get all the grades you want. You will get the ATAR you want. You will get the study score you want. You will make your parents proud. You will make your friends happy. You will make yourself happy. You will be proud of yourself. If I told you you will achieve all those aspirations just by committing to the process and to the goal, tell me you wouldn't do it. Because I would find it very hard to find a student that is going to tell me that he's not going to commit or she's not going to commit to that process if there's a 98% probability that they're going to get the aspirations which they want, okay? So that long form is concept 2. So 2 concepts. The first is expose yourself to the concept multiple times, ideally 4. The second concept is make sure you use the aspiration, goal, process method in order to set goals. The way you're setting goals is completely wrong, right? And if you can make sure you adhere to these two concepts, then you will make sure that you will never get a shitty grade ever again in your life. And this will completely solve all your issues. Because most of the time, you do have a false sense of security. You have a false sense of security thinking that you do deserve a certain grade and you think you tried, but the only reason you think you deserve a certain grade is because you were stressed out of your mind for the last 3 days, studying for 12 hours a day, because you didn't be proactive. You weren't proactive, okay? You got to be proactive. And if you're not proactive and you're being reactive, then you don't deserve the grade and you won't get the grade. But there are some times where you can be reactive and you can cram for 3 days before the exam and you will get a certain grade. You'll do pretty well. And then you'll feel happy about yourself that you pulled that off. And now that's reinforcing a bad behavior, because you studied your ass off for 3 days before the exam. You got a good grade. Now you think that you can get away with that next time. So that's now the way you study. You do nothing. It's like work hard, play hard. That never works, right? It does work if you take it in terms of consistency throughout the day. Like, you know, you can work hard, play hard as long as you're studying consistently throughout the day. But work hard, play hard on like a long time frame when you're just messing around for 3 months and then 2 or like 1 week before the exam, you're studying your ass off. That doesn't work, because consistency beats all dedication, hard work, everything, okay? Just show up every single day and you'll get the results that you want, I promise.